The end of the season is near because the legendary has been made to have a higher drop chance. Mythic Plus has been nerfed yet again to make it more accessible for people to push, especially now with the MDI that has also shifted the meta into an interesting direction. We are getting closer and closer to the last season of Dragonflight and more to the War Within. Are you one of those people that have done heroic Amir Drasil every week on 3 characters for 2 to 3 months and still no legendary axe? Suffice to say, the legendary axe has brought a lot of strength users into the new raid, and it has been pretty fun to actually see people use it and do a lot of damage, but the frustration with not being able to get it has been more than palpable. There's always going to be a controversial opinion on how to obtain legendaries, especially now in World of Warcraft, and regardless of that, one thing remains true: it sucks to do it so many months on end, so many weeks on end, and still not get it, and just constantly get those bad luck protection embers of Fyr'Alath that are just telling you, hey, you have a higher chance. Higher chance by what? 1%? 0.1%? 0.0000001%? We don't know what the chances of obtaining the legendary is and how likely it is to get it with more embers of Fyr'Alath. We just know it's more likely. That's very relative and very abstract and doesn't really tell us much of anything. And the frustration has been very loud in the community. I haven't gotten it either on 3 characters that I do raid with, so but Blizzard has made a blue post yesterday, depending on when you watch this video, and they have increased the drop chance provided by the embers of Fyr'Alath. We still don't know how much, but to quote their original post and to kind of get an insight on what they envision these legendary acquiring processes to be, we're gonna quote them a little bit. So essentially they said that many aspects of Dragonflight have reflected a shift in philosophy towards designs that allow us to enjoy reaching a point where we feel done with a character's power progression. True. Legendaries return as an exception to this. Legendaries are intended to be a special reward that some players would aspire to obtain over the course of a season, demonstrating a display of excellence in the most challenging content. This is something that I definitely agree with. Legendaries shouldn't be obtainable day 1, week 1, or maybe even month 1 of a content being released, or a season, or a raid tier, because they have to feel special, and part of the reason that they feel special is because they are difficult to obtain. Making them difficult to obtain and leaving them behind the wall of RNG just creates a situation where you do everything right every week and still you don't have the legendaries, you don't know how close you are to the legendary, and there's a very good chance you might not even loot it by the end of the season. This is bad design. Sure, make the legendary take longer to acquire, but at least maybe remove the RNG wall. Make it so that, you know, if you do this for 2 months, you guaranteed get your legendary or something like that, because the effort has to be rewarded. And when somebody is getting lucky in the week 1 and gets a legendary, that person's like, oh my god, this is so cool, I got my legendary, and you're like, hey man, congrats, that's very lucky. But then you do the work, more work than that person, and you still don't have it. That just leaves a bad feeling. So this needs to be ironed out. What they went on to say in the blue post is that as Season 3 has unfolded, we've increasingly heard feedback from frustrated players who have been clearing Amir Drasil weekly on heroic difficulty with no Fyr'Alath in sight, and we want to give those players a sure path to achieving their goal. This sounds a lot like they still think that their way is right. They're just caving into people's frustrated feedback on acquiring the Fyr'Alath legendary when it still feels bad. Make the acquiring process take longer, but making a sure thing instead of making it RNG. Earlier today, with a hotfix that is now live, we significantly increased the effect of all embers of Fyr'Alath for players who receive them. This increase is retroactive and applies to all players whether or not you've consumed any embers you may have. As always, thank you for your feedback. What this means is that the drop chance of the legendary is still the same. However, once you do not get the legendary, you keep looting the embers of Fyr'Alath that are supposed to be the bad luck protection and increase your chance of looting Fyr'Alath on your next Farok kill. One other thing that we know about acquiring this legendary is that if you do the boss on heroic difficulty, it adds up the drop chance from normal and LFR, meaning that if you do heroic instead of normal and LFR, you don't need to do normal and LFR that week anymore. Whereas if you don't do that, you can do LFR, normal and heroic and just obtain the same results. So just doing heroic normally is supposed to save you time and hopefully get you that legendary eventually. And now if you have looted Embers of Fyr'Alath for the last couple of weeks or months, all of those would provide your character right now with a higher chance of looting the next Fyr'Alath or Fyr'Alath loot legendary weapon thing with a higher chance the next time you kill the boss. Now, we still don't know what this means. We don't know what the original Embers gave you, and we don't know what the new Embers give you. We just know it's more. And because it is so vague, it's still slightly frustrating. We just hope that we can get this legendary by the time the season ends, because what's the point of farming it an entire season and just getting it last week before season 4 rolls out? That just does not feel well. So hopefully now you'll get yours and we can get ours on our Saturday streams that you can catch on twitch.tv/Marcelian_Online. A good sign of a season coming to an end is also the fact that the endgame content, Mythic Plus and usually Mythic raids, constantly get nerfed and nerfed so that they become more accessible. More people can finish their progress, their character goals or anything like that and feel satisfied with the season journey that they've had. We constantly see this with more Mythic Plus nerfs. Specifically last week we've had a bunch of nerfs for Everbloom, Throne of Tides and Waycrest Manor, specifically for Waycrest Manor, where the Pallet Gorger's melee damage has been reduced by 66%. That's a big chunk of damage reduction that they've added to their attack, meaning that pulls that take the Pallet Gorgers will be a lot more doable, since I don't know if you've tanked any Waycrests on high enough level or maybe even fortified, but pulling those big packs from inside the chapel and getting those Pallet Gorgers in will kill the tank more often than anything else in Waycrest Manor. So it's kind of nice to see them a little bit evened out. The pulls have been easier to do in the last week, well, that's great, and this also happened most likely because of MDI that followed these nerfs and kind of changed a lot of things. Speaking of MDI, just to kind of show how things progress, people have been playing different specs on MDI than what you've seen other people push big keys with. We know that when you go into a POG and try to do a key, the expectancy of everybody is very much molded and shaped by the meta. Everybody wants you to play a Fire Mage, Balanced Druid, Outlaw Rogue, Havoc Demon Hunter to be able to clear the key and have a high chance of doing it. And as we always see, the community is heavily influenced by either the top key pushers or in this case the MDI, where the shift has changed to stuff like Destro Warlock, who has seen very little play and push progression over the course of the season. In our last range DPS tier list, by looking at the overall performance of all the specs across multiple platforms of data analysis, we kind of came to the conclusion that Destro Warlock is around B tierish. That means it's a little bit of average. Well, not only did we see people use Destro Warlocks in MDI, they have also risen in the overall rankings or tier lists or data collection hierarchy that we've had on Warcraft logs and now Archon.gg, and bumped Destro Warlock close to being S tier. Not only that, it also bumped Red Paladin above Havoc Demon Hunter. Now, of course, you always should, with our tier list as well, take this data with a grain of salt. However, once you spread out this data over multiple consistent tier lists, over multiple consistent analysis of Mythic Plus performance, you will see a pattern. And the pattern is that people play probably more Red Paladins, maybe than Havoc, at least in the last week, and it has something to do with the fact that MDI played Red Paladin. It has something to do with the fact that MDI played Destro Warlock. Now, what does this mean for your average player? It probably shouldn't mean much of anything, but if you really want to dig deep into the info of this, outside of actually, playing in the MDI and knowing exactly the reasoning behind this, Destro Warlock just does really good on really big pulls. The kind of pulls that you saw in the MDI, the kind of pulls that you don't see on a plus 32. So just because people can use the spec in MDI doesn't mean you can clear 30s or 31s or 32s with it. Maybe you can, but not in the way that you might expect by just looking at the MDI performance. What this also means on the other side of the spectrum is that you can do those 23s, 24s, the kind of level keys that you've seen in the MDI in the last weekend, with a lot of other surprising specs that you probably haven't invited into your groups at all because you thought, Destro Warlock. Who wants a Destro Warlock? Give me those balanced druids and fire mages, man. Destro Warlock is a dead spec. Is it though? Is it really? So at the very least, what people ideally should take from the last weekend of MDI is that don't take these rankings and metas so seriously. Well, not just some, but a lot of other specs are incredibly strong and can do content so well if in the right player's hands. And you can just do M+ in this case with pretty much everybody, right? Don't discriminate towards Destro Warlocks unless you're pushing those 31s and 32s, right? But that's like a whole different playing field, right? And just have fun and pick the specs that you enjoy. Because we already have a video talking about how fun some range DPS specs are, a little bit from our perspective, but maybe you agree or maybe you don't agree, but sometimes playing for fun is just way better and everybody is happier for it. Click the video.